live.
I'm live. Good evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about making spheres, but between centers on the lathe. I've been turning spheres now for probably about 10 years. Several hundred years ago, somebody discovered a formula how to make that. You can draw an octagon and you connect the inside of it. That's pretty close to a sphere. So using that formula for the last several hundred years, people have been making spheres by hand on the lathe. So I'm going to be using that tonight, and I'm going to be turning between centers. Now it sort of takes the fun out of it if you have to calculate exact measurements every time that you're going to go to turn a sphere. So I set up a table for that. And just so you know, within the next day or two, along with the video that Ralph is making of this, you'll receive a summary on turning spheres. You'll receive a sphere turning guide, which I'll explain in a minute. You'll receive some detailed instructions on turning a sphere using the method I'm about to show you. So one thing I discovered that to make it easy in all these formulas, I came up with a chart that measured spheres between 1 inch in size up to 1 foot in size in half-inch increments. So this is the table that you're going to get, and it will show you how to easily mark out the wood to make the sphere. So in addition to those measurements within half-inch increments, I also added in this chart all the typical spheres that you might want to make. So for example, from a golf ball to a pool ball to a baseball, which are all odd size measurements. They don't, most of them don't fall within that half-inch range, or of course all odd sizes, all the way up to basketball in size. So I have put those measurements in the chart. And to also found it was easier, rather than using the decimals and fractions to figure out the measurements, I converted everything to millimeters and put that in the chart. So that's one thing you're going to receive, so you'll be able to follow along. So let's look at an example now on the lathe. So I've pre-made these previously for a previous demonstration. Can you see that now, Ralph?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to start out with a rough blank, and no matter what method you use, even if you use a jig, you have to come down and create a cylinder in the dimension that the final dimension that you want to have as a cylinder. For example, this is 3 inches. Okay. So you make that exactly 3 inches all the way across, and then you go to the next step, which is you start marking out. So you take your calipers and you measure. You cut in with your parting tool on one edge, and then you measure the exact dimension here onto this side. So that gives you the two equal dimensions. Okay. Then the next step is you're going to be cutting in tenons exactly on that mark. Can you see both of those?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to cut into part in on both sides and make tenons in a certain dimension according to the size here, which I'll get into in a second. Then after you cut those down, you'll end up with the ball here, because you'll be cutting from this mark down to that mark, which again, I'll show you in a second. And same thing on the other side. And then you'll be making marks on each side here. And you'll end up with, if you trim a little bit here and here and here, you'll end up with a sphere once you part off. So might look complicated here, but I'm going to do it in real time on this smaller piece. So these are 3 inch blocks, but I'm going to do this 2.5 inch block on here. And And why 2.5 inches? That just happens to be the size piece of wood I had. So didn't have a 3-inch piece. So here we go. So the first decision you have to make is you never want to make a block the exact size of the sphere, because you have points in here that'll stick into the wood. So if all you have is a small scrap of wood and you don't want to do that, yeah, you can glue a couple blocks on each side to make up for the points sticking into the wood. But I had plenty of wood here, so I just jammed them in. And if you notice on this side of the lathe, I have an extended drive center. So this is a little bit longer than the normal drive center you see. And that helps me on my particular lathe, that I can get into this side turning and not to have the headstock mess it up at all. So that's why I have an extended drive center.
Where did you get the extended drive center?
I think it was from Craft Supply.
We'll dig it up and send a link with the rest of the information.
Yeah. Okay, so this is exactly 2.5 inches in diameter. So it's taken my calipers and measured 2.5 inches. Okay, so now, as you can see here, the 2.5 inches fits within this block of wood. So the next decision depends on the kind of wood. Here, the grain is all the same, but if you had some bad piece of wood here, or you had a knot, you wanted to include it or not include it. That shows you can move the starting measurement anywhere you want. And I'm just going to pick a random spot over here. So we'll turn on the lathe or dial it up. And so then we'll part in. Okay. Now we'll refer to the chart. And okay, we're right here. I picked 2.5 inches. You don't need to change. No, yeah, the overhead. So I have 2.5 inches, and what I have done for this particular line is I made a blow up so you can actually read it. So here, this is where I parted right here. So that's the 0 point. So now I measure out 19 millimeters and put a mark out 32 millimeters, 45 millimeters, and finally the end point, 64 millimeters. So 2.5 inches equals 64 millimeters. Unless you're calculating, and it's actually 63.5 millimeters, but millimeter is about the width of a pencil line. So using that guide, we're going to make our pencil marks. So I got a millimeter ruler here. So the first mark is at 19 millimeters. Okay. The second mark, 32 millimeters, and 32 millimeters represents the center of the sphere. Next mark is 45 millimeters. And the final mark is the width is 64 millimeters. Okay.
When you part on the outside of that.
You want
lines.
Now you want to split it since
Split
it's
the line.
since it's 63 and a half.
Okay.
You can split it. So
On this
let me mark it so I can see that better. There we go. So now put a parting line on the outside, or not on the outside, on the exact pencil mark. And go back here a little. Okay, so that's the exact dimension of the sphere. Okay, and we can check that on the caliber. You see how that is exact there and there. Okay, so now I'm going to waste some of this wood off here, and there's another dimension that I've shown on the chart. This dimension here, 26. So I'm going to cut in so that the tenon I'm left with will be 26 millimeters in width, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So I've already pre-measured this to 26 millimeters. So we'll dial it up and part in to 26 millimeters. And we have quite a ways to go. There you go, 26 millimeters. Now let's do the other side. Okay. Now we're going to take my bowl gouge. I like using this bowl gouge, and this is just waste material on this end right now. And let me remove that. Okay, now we've removed the waste material on both sides. Now, the reason I put that tenon at 26 millimeters is, let me get my example back here. So we have this line here, and I'm going to cut away from this line down to this tenon, like a 45-degree cut, or it'll end up being a 45-degree cut on both sides. It'll end up looking like this. Okay. And so by making those tenons here, I don't have to keep on measuring. I just cut from there to there, and I know when I'm done. I'm going to use both the bowl gouge and then finally skew. Pretty close. I use this big fat skew, so it gives me shows me as parallel to my cut. And now I'm scraping, so I got to scrape in the last millimeter or so. Because if you use the gouge and you cut a millimeter too deep, well, then you end up with a smaller sphere. And you're... Okay, now let's do the other side. Even closer on that side, maybe. Let's see. Okay. Now, since this is the center line, you never turn the center line away because that's the outside of the sphere. You'll end up sanding it off at the end. Okay. Okay, so now I've cut in both sides. Now I have to go in further. So also in the chart, which is off the chart here, the 7. That's 7 millimeters to make. So this is an octagon. So you're going to make a hexagon, I think, a 16-sided. Okay, so
For you to say.
yeah. So what you're doing is you're measuring 7 millimeters on each side. According to the chart, let's see, that's about somewhere about there. And about there. And on that side, now you don't really have to do this because it's, or I don't anyway. I'm an expert.
Yes, you're an expert.
Yeah, no, because if you see, it was hard to see on the model, but if we do just one side here, you see you're turning off this piece right here, and you see how little that turning is, or that you're going. So I don't really measure it anymore. I just know I'm going to be knocking those peaks off. Now here you have to knock this off too, but so you have to part in further and waste more wood to be able to get into there, this corner. Okay.
So you reduce your tenon.
Right. So now I'm going to reduce the tenon even more because I no longer need the measurement. Okay. So now I've reduced the tenon. And now I'm going to waste this part, this part, this part, and this part. And I didn't measure this side, but well, that introduces errors if you don't measure it. And then hard to do turning lefty. So sometimes we use the skew for that. And now never turn away that center mark. So now you can just eyeball a little. Yeah, it's beginning to look spear-like. Spear-like. Okay, so now that's got a little bit. Let me turn a little bit more, and then we'll part it off. Go to the next stage. Let's see. Let me get that edge a little bit. Okay, close enough for government. Let's see. Okay, so now we're off to the next stage. I could do let me take it slightly bit more off that, and that'll. There we go. There we go. Helps in sanding, reduce the amount of time sanding. So
Right, make sure when you're sawing this off that you get the tool rest out of the way.
yeah, well, I have two of these. One I use over the tool rest, which is missing a bunch of teeth, and but I brought the good one tonight. So. Okay. So you never want to have, you feel like, hey, I'm just going to twist that off. You never do that because since it's end grain, you'll pull some of the fibers out and you'll end up with a hole in there, and then you'll have to turn it again or fill it or something. So I always completely saw it. Off camera, I'm gonna saw it. Okay, so I've sawed it off camera. I could have spent a few more seconds. I could have spent, let's see, I could have spent a few more seconds right there. But we'll go with what we have because it's not that critical. And now, oh, need a knockout bar.
Down the two-year left. No, on the end of the leg.
Oh,
Chrome handle.
ah, okay. So now we're gonna knock out the drive center. Okay. Okay, so now we have here is a cup center. And all this is I put a faceplate on here and then a scrap of wood and turned it a little cone shape. And I glued some leather in there. And you never want to just leave the wood in there, because if you get a catch and it spins on the wood, it'll give you a burn mark on there. So you always want to put a piece of leather, or like on this other side, I have a piece of mouse pad, neoprene on this side. So this cup center,
Shop made tools.
where'd my, oh, I got it. Okay, so we want to lock this in place. Now on this side, this is a homemade one. I just got a nut that fits this side, and turned a little block of wood, a little cup in there, and glued in that neoprene.
Also make those with a tap and just thread the woodwork screws on there, which we've showed you guys before. We're gonna use it down.
We barely heard you, Ralph.
I said those are both shop made. What Brian's got is the same as I've got. The first one I made with a glued a nut in there, match the threads on the one-way live center. You can also make them with a tap and just tap the wood. Okay, which we've showed before at other demos.
You can also buy some from, like these are from Chucky. And these are like about $45 for the pair. That goes on there for the live center. And that's the drive center. And these lasted a fairly long time, 45 bucks. You can also buy a set from Carter for $100. That come in several sizes. But I found that, these work just as well.
Yeah, and they were almost free.
Yeah, so $2 for the nut, and although I just use that faceplate because that's what I had. If you have a chuck, you can just have a piece of wood, drill a hole in it, and be held with the chuck. So you don't really need to buy those. Okay. Also, the size of the ends here is supposed to be 1/3 of the size of the sphere that you're turning. So for example, on these are fairly large for that sphere, where that's a lot smaller. So that gives you access, better access when you're turning, completing the turning. Okay. So now we're going to put these. This was the center line, so now we're going to line it up with the end. We don't do that. Okay. Pop that in. Okay. Now, when you spin this, and we do this because this also always sticks out a little bit, we're going to first turn off the little nubbins there, and then we're going to do sanding. Okay. And depends on how well you turn the edges, depends on how much sanding you have to do to final dimensions. Okay. And also it depends on how much sticks out is what kind of tool you use. Yes, I use the gouge for a second. And you'll see the ghost image as it's rotating.
You're watching the horizon.
Yes, I am. Not watching the tool, watching the opposites.
So, eager to see what's happening, watching the actual horizon.
Right. Now I'm gonna do a little scraping. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, now you see how we turned that part away? Now I'm going to show you what's worth the price of admission. Don't tell anybody. Now you can buy now certainly you can buy a jigs. There's plenty of sphere turning jigs. However, you cannot go from a cylinder using a jig. You have to get to about you almost have to get to about that point before you start using the jig. Otherwise, you'll be there working on it forever. Yeah. Now jigs, I priced the jigs today. A Holstech is $220, a Carter's $426, a Clark is $550, a Paul Howard is $200, a Vermex $500, and a Scheffler kit is $240 for a sphere turning jig. And this last part is about what you use the jig for. So, however, if you purchase one of these, a plumber's cap, okay, for under $2, that will do about the same thing in finishing. Okay, so the way this works is the theory is that a circle on a ring on another circle touches everywhere equally distant. However, if this sphere is a spheroid, is not perfectly round, this will only touch the high points. So with sandpaper in between there, you'll just be sanding off the high points. Now, certainly, if you held your hand against it, you might not hit everything well, but I found using this works very good, a whole lot faster, making stuff perfectly round. Or so I have a long piece of sandpaper so I can grip onto it rather than just a little piece of paper on the end. So I can grip it and then just press it on. And we don't need that much speed for sanding. Okay. And just rotate it back and forth. And so you can see I'm pressing like this with the sandpaper. And hold tight onto the sandpaper, otherwise it'll fly away. And if this gets loaded up, you just pick another section. Okay. And now you mark good. So you mark here. So now you got to turn it. So you don't just sand in one spot. So you turn it 90 degrees and then you keep on sanding. And depends on how well you turned initially is how much sanding you do. But even though I'm out quite a bit, probably 10 minutes to get a perfectly round sphere. And we turn it again.
You're turning 90 degrees each time?
No, just the first 2 times. Now the rest of the time is random. And I want to keep doing random.
Right.
And you can see how it's wobbling here. So even though it's not perfectly centered, I found that that doesn't matter as long as you're pressing this against it. That's the key, is pressing this against it. Now, certainly if you're cutting with a tool, it matters, but not in the sanding. And we won't sand completely to the end because you get the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can see how fairly, let's see, you can see how pretty round that is already. Let's see if we can, measuring.
Brian, on your sanding cap, do you get a different size for larger ones?
I found that this is, I think, a 1 inch, and yeah, I'll need those. Then I've used a 1.5 inches, and that's about most that I've used. I've tried bigger ones, and it's the same as these ends, about a third of the size or smaller, because you can see how much you get there. If you get too big, I found it doesn't make any difference. Just that size and one size bigger, you're good to go. So
But what I meant is if you made a bigger sphere, would you need a bigger cap?
yeah, just one size bigger than that, and that's good for even very large spheres. At least that's what I found.
But you can buy all the caps you want, Dave.
Yeah. Now, some people in sanding, they've taken, they've cut round templates, okay, and they split them up into sections. Like here's a piece of plywood in that section of that exact size. So if you're turning multiples, and you can cut a quarter section out and you can glue some sandpaper in there. That's one method. Some people, I've seen some people use chalk in there to see exactly what they've sanded and have left to do. But I found that cup is good enough. You just keep rotating it until it's 100%. So let's see.
Sometimes simple is best.
Yeah. Okay. So I turn lots of these baseballs. Oh, overhead. Okay. So I've turned lots of these baseballs, and these are the regulation size is about 3 inches. And so basically, you buy one of these, you rip it apart. Now you have a template. So you lay the template over the baseball. You trace a pencil line all the way around it. Okay. And then you go to Harbor Freight, buy a wood burning pen for $10. And it turns out that's the exact size of a stitching in it. And then you just touch it on there as you go around. And it takes actually 5 minutes to make this stitching on this 3-inch wood sphere. So 5 minutes to make a baseball after you've turned the sphere. And if you use a softball, here's the same kind of template on a softball, same principle. Now, if you turn some piece of wood, this is good for ugly wood too. So if you turn some ugly wood, you can paint it, and then while it's on the lathe in the round, you can cut grooves on it and spray some paint on it. So here's one example. Here's a Christmassy sort of thing. Kept it between centers, just parted through, and then painted each section a different color. And of course, good, just a solid color. And it's good if you have a bowl of these things that they're all different kinds. And now here's an interesting little jig that you can buy. It's just a plumbing compression fixture.
Yeah.
And compression coupling. Okay, there's 2 couplings, one on each side, and so you cut it in half. And so on this, I have a hole here, fits on a chuck. And of course, this particular size only fits one size of sphere, which is 2.5 inches. So you stick that 2.5 inch sphere on there, and you crank that down, and it holds it in there. And now you can turn a design on the end, similar to that. So you can turn rings, flip it over.
Real fancy, you could
turn small rings in between it. So as easy as that. That only takes a few minutes to make. And then you can do glue ups. So that's maple and walnut. Now, so you take some green wood and you turn it, and then you do all this sanding, and then you wait a week or you wait 6 months, and it goes out around because it's not completely dry. So then you'd have to put it back in the lathe and turn it again. So if you're turning green wood, don't bother sanding it all the way. Just turn it to a rough shape, throw it in a box, wait till it comes down to the proper humidity, whatever that may be, 12%, 10%. Yeah. And then turn it to the final shape. Otherwise, it'll go oblong. Also, if you use different kinds of wood that are glued together, they should be all at the same moisture level, because if they're not, 6 months later, you'll feel ridges where they dried at different rates or shrunk at different rates. So it has a ridge on it. So then you'll end up having to put it back in the lathe and turn it around again. Okay. Things that I've found in this. Yeah, let's see. That's about it. Any questions? Are we still online?
Yeah, we're still online.
Yeah, Brian?
Great demo, Brian. Great.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally got around to it.
Hey, gee.
But now I have a question, Brian. At one time, didn't you take PVC and make fixtures for them? Use PVC as a fixture to sand?
Don't understand the question.
At one time, if you did this demo before, I thought you used different PVC fixtures,
Yeah,
jam chucks.
that was the PVC fixture. I had I have this fixture. That one. I have this fixture I didn't show, but say you're turning something in resin, like this is baseball size, that's 3 inch, that fits inside. You can actually take a piece of wood, scrap piece of wood, turn a hole in the side so you can put it in the chuck, put this little piece of PVC there, put something inside, fill it full of resin. So, and I made a little bit deeper than that. So then you could chuck it up again and make a sphere with something embedded in resin. So that was one PVC thing. Show that one?
Oh, yeah, show
Okay, this is, I was reluctant to show you this because this is unobtainium now. It was discontinued a couple years ago. This is a Seguin Berger sphere caliper. And based on that, the math for making a sphere, in that you take your dimension of the sphere with the caliper. And then on this side, this automatically gives you the side measurement. This automatically gives the measurement around that camera. That automatically tells you where you draw your lines inside. And then this little piece right here will do the final dimension. That shows on each side where you're going to cut. So, and that's one single caliper. But this guy in New Zealand made these, but he stopped a couple of years ago because of COVID. And then it was $85, including shipping from New Zealand. You can find one today on eBay for $270. So, and that would be the only one, which is probably why it's $270. But so it is based on that mathematical principle, and this you can do an infant size up to about 11 inches and get the proper measurements.
Oh, yeah.
So, but with the chart that I gave you, if you're doing anything, any sort of normal sphere or ball that I put on the list, and anything within a ½ inch from 1 inch up to 1 foot, it's still pretty quick and easy. So, any more questions?
Any questions, guys?
I haven't got any questions, but I'm impressed and I'm inspired. I like what I've seen, and I also have made spheres, candle holder spheres out of plywood, and getting it round has been my biggest problem. So I've learned something today.
Now you know what to do.
I do indeed. I'm going to go to New Zealand first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for the demo. That was great. And what a cool, clever set of calipers.
Great presentation, Brian.
okay. So anybody got any work they've made they want to show off? Let me unspotlight here.
I can start it off here, Ralph, if you're ready.
Sure.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, go.
Okay, can you see this?
No, hold it up. Up. Yeah, that's it. Cover your face.
Like that? All I see is Brian, but okay.
All you see is Brian.
Yep.
I don't know why.
And we're flipping back and forth between
Hold on,
Dave and
everybody.
Brian.
Everybody keep quiet for a minute.
I only see Pat.
All right, everybody stay quiet for just 1 minute. All right, spotlight's on you, Dave.
There you go. Yeah, I mentioned at the last meeting, I went to symposium. I went to Mike Mahoney did a demonstration on coring with the McNaughton. So I took some notes, came back and did some coring. I was happy with it. It seemed to be easier this time. It's a piece of mahogany that I had since December. It was 12/21/21 is what I had written on there. So those of you who aren't familiar with it, you start out with one piece, and the tools that you use to core it take out one piece of bowl at a time. These haven't been finished. And then the last one, this chunk of wood started out as 15 pounds. And now it's at 3 pounds something. So it's lost a lot. And I'm still letting it dry because the only evidence I had of water is there was a round spot at the very bottom when I was turning it. That's the only water I saw in it, but these other two moved pretty much. Maybe because the mistake I made is I put this in a paper bag right away. And these smaller ones I didn't, because I was going to get to them and I didn't, and just leave them in the air. They warped pretty much. I got pretty much the warping out of it now. But I did another one. This is about 11-inch diameter. But went back to it. So it takes practice. And the only measurement I made was 10% of the diameter of this bowl. Is what I did was, then I just went in inch and 3/8 for the tenon for the one inside, and just went 1 3/8, 1 3/8, 1 3/8, and that's how I came up with these 3 bowls. That's the only measurements I took. I think that's pretty much what you did, Pat, when you did your demonstration. I guess you did. And just one other. This is some of the Sabaku we got with Ron Bowser. I don't know if you remember that, Ralph. I'm sure you do.
Oh, yeah.
That goes back a ways too. That was last year, wasn't
No.
it? Anyways, this one did take a while to dry.
I can't keep track anymore.
I'm still letting it dry a little more. All I've got on it right now is Danish oil. but it took a while
Leave
to
them out
dry.
in your shop when you're drying, or are you bringing them in the house?
I put it in the bag
Are you leaving them in the shop or in the house?
in the garage.
Okay.
Yeah, I leave them in the garage. And what I found too, when I do put them in the bag, what I do just for the first week or two, I'll wrap it in newspaper. And that really soaks it up. That when you, after the first week or so, that newspaper is really wet. And none of the ink comes off, but it's just another way to help dry. But
Right. I thought you had gotten some of those silica beads.
I got some of those silicone beads and I wasn't too impressed with it. I'd use it on one mahogany bowl. It seemed to help. But the problem with those beads is the beads are like, 30-second diameter or something, or smaller.
Yeah.
I'm still stepping on them. They just have
Oh.
a tendency to just kind of, when you're pouring it from the container into the bag, and then from the bag back into the container, somehow they just keep jumping out on the floor.
That's kind of like roofing tar. When you open the can, it just jumps out of the can and gets all over you.
Yep, that's what this does.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll see a couple of them floating around.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. That's it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got a couple little bowls. Let's see here. This one, I'm not sure. I think maybe it's tamarind, and it's finished with axe polishing compound and then some paste wax over the top. And this one is a little mahogany bowl that got the same finish on it. That's it. Yeah. I'll get back to turning when I get the big chunk of oak off there. My faceplate is stuck on the spindle. So
Uh-oh.
we'll get there.
I need to bring the fire axe over.
Could be. Could be.
Let me know.
And I need to get a couple of pretty stiff pieces of steel to, block everything in place and crank it around.
Oh, boy.
Those things happen.
Well, it's a reminder, guys, don't leave anything overnight, especially the wood onto your spindle. I know everybody does it. We leave the spur drives and the centers into the Morris tapers. We leave stuff onto the threading, and it's a real problem. So it's best if you stop 5 minutes and take everything off.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're turning wet wood.
I've got something, Ralph, if you got time.
Okay. All right, hold on, but I'm gonna ask you to please speak up because we can barely hear you.
Okay. I turn a lot of Ikebana vases. This is, I don't know, let's see. A crotch piece of mango. And I do a different thing to it. If you notice, there's a hole on both sides. So it's the type of thing, I get one silhouette this way so that if they get tired of it, they can flip it over and get another silhouette. And the frog fits in both of the holes.
Well, that means you got to charge double for it.
Yes, that's, you turn double. Now this time I decided what I've normally done on this is leave it flat like that, or just turn it over and it sits on the hole. But I wanted to elevate it a little bit. So this time I turned a piece of wood that fits into here and fits in both sides. And that way it kind of gives it a little bit of elevation. I don't know, is that a better picture? Gives
Yeah.
it a little bit of elevation. And if you notice, just painted black so that it doesn't, take away or distract. It just is a little bit of elevation. So I'm experimenting with that a little bit. This is
Price
somebody's,
just went triple.
say it again.
The price just tripled.
There you go. It's a creative art piece. It's tripled now. But this works really well. Pat, if you need a demo for next month, I can probably work out something like this if you want, or another month if it works.
That sounds like a marvelous idea, Dave.
Thank you,
Okay.
David.
And this is, I've been using Armor Shield. I love Deft Oil. It's no longer available. I called the company, they're not manufacturing. Deft was sold to, oh gosh, it's the company that Home Depot is now selling, whatever brands they are. I think Rust-Oleum got sold to them as well. Anyway, so I've found the closest thing I've found so far is this Armor Shield, and it goes on real nice. You rub it in, let it dry. It's tack-free. I sand it down to 220 in between coats, put on another coat, and then I buff it with the Beal buffing system, and it gives it a real nice finish. And I don't seem to have a dust issue. So, I really like the Armor Shield. So.
Is Armor Shield anything like tung oil or linseed oil, or is that like a varnish effect?
No, it's about the same. It's about like a linseed oil.
Okay.
And it comes in satin, semi-gloss, and gloss. And of course, for me, I always like the semi-gloss. I don't like a satin finish. And I know everybody will tell you that if you want to sell your stuff, what is it, Ralph? Bright things sell.
SS, Chinese sells.
So, this gives it a little bit of buff. And if you haven't used the Beal buffing system, it's marvelous because it really changes the texture and the feel of your piece. It smooths it out. It smooths out the finish, and it's pretty fast.
It's a cool piece, David.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you guys are trying to end this meeting, if there's a time limit that you're trying to hit. I'm new here, and if you guys would like, I could show you a piece I just finished.
No problem.
Would it be possible for me to share my screen? It would need for the host to click and edit that setting.
We may be here for a while then.
I had a feeling we weren't a tech club.
No, not for the time. I mean, for sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be right next to the share screen button, a small arrow. I just relocated from Savannah, Georgia to Fort Lauderdale. I grew up in Coral Springs and moved to Savannah to study industrial design, where I fell in love with the wood lathe. For the past 8 months, I've been operating more as a studio artist, exploring turning stone on my wood lathe, and exploring a series of handmade lamps with stone as the shade, sort of hollowed out pieces with the light bulb inside of them.
Sean, see if you can.
You got it. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay.
Tell me, is this working?
Yeah.
This is the 5th piece of the series I just mentioned, and the first one that has a wooden detail, a piece of burl from Australia. And as I said, using the stone as the shade of the lamp is fun because Italian alabaster lets the light through pretty beautifully. These were some of the first pieces as I was just learning and sort of really exploring the best ways to approach turning stone.
Outdoors.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Absolutely.
Using super glue in the cracks?
I don't. I am a bit nervous about the cracks sometimes, and as I've tried to push past 1/4 inch wall thickness, I've exploded a couple of pieces. but I find that the cracks aren't as concerning as they look in terms of a piece exploding.
Can I make a suggestion for you?
Please do. I'm
If you
rather new to this.
go to Home Depot and they have packing, it's not a tape, it's a saran wrap type stuff and rolls. And if you, let's say you're starting to turn the outside or the inside and you're a little concerned, wrap the saran wrap around the outside, and that'll at least give you some protection.
That's a really good idea, especially like hollowing out certain pieces. Having it wrapped is just smart. There's
You
a
know, and the stuff
few
is
videos
cheap.
of the process.
It's cheap, so use plenty of wrap. It protects you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for that. Aside from the lights, I've been making some home objects like candlesticks, of course, some incense holders, ashtrays, and I also turn wood. This is a piece I'm working on, which is a lot of pieces that all together I look at it as one piece, a collection of these sort of donut shaped sculptures. Really the goal just to highlight all these different beautiful trees that most people don't know about. I'm at 38 of them right now, hoping to reach 50 before displaying them publicly. I'm 24. I've been turning wood for 3 years and stone for almost 1 year. Really just falling deeper and deeper in love with it.
What are you using as a cutter?
I only use carbide tools, and I know the perception, but in terms of turning stone, it's really the only viable workflow. High speeds.
Of course.
Yeah. But these I also turn with carbide.
Also, another suggestion, if you can get a piece of our oolite limestone and figure out how to attach it. I've attached it to the lathe and I've turned a little of it. It might be fun for some of your forms. I don't think it would be a lampshade, but some of your forms. And I found if you wet it, it turns a little easier. If you want to get together and let me know about it, I can show you what I've done with it.
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate all the information. There's a set of candlesticks I just finished last week before moving down here. Then made a couple more sets for a gallery up in Savannah. And that's me.
That is beautiful. That is impressive. I like it very much.
Thank you so much.
What are you turning? What kind of lathe? It looked like you were turning in your house.
So in Savannah, I'll share my screen again.
Oh, I took it back.
No, I can get it, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So here you can see the Laguna 1836 I got last October. And when I was living in Savannah, I was renting a space in a building that a friend of mine owned, working with a blacksmith next door, another woodworker in one of the other rooms, and then a metal fabricator in the back. So I call it my studio, sort of my shop. I, for a decade, was painting and selling paintings. So I identify very much as an artist and call it my studio. Was blessed with this beautiful natural light, the big curtains, and am now settling into a place in Deerfield Beach with no windows, but just feel blessed to be able to continue exploring this work. The Laguna 1836 is an incredible lathe so far. I have little to no complaints. And it's nice to meet you guys.
Glad you came.
Your stuff is beautiful.
Yes.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you, David.
Hey, anybody else got anything?
I am not classically trained. I've been messing about, experimenting with woodwork, typically plywood, as I said before, and seeing that spherical demo, I want to show you a spherical lamp holder that I've made. I don't know if you can see that.
Hold
It's
on, give me a second, I'll spotlight it for you.
okay.
There you go.
Okay, this essentially is plywood glued together in a hexagon and then machined to a sphere, and a 3-inch candle holder. I make these in threes, and I've got a variety of shapes, and I've also got lamps that also follow the same style. What I'm trying to do here is highlight the grain of the wood, and in doing so, I have limited shapes that I can create that highlights the wood. That's why I use a matte finish on it, so that you don't detract from the grain. What I'm seeing here from the different effects that you've got with the wood, I would like to find a combination of my style with some solid wood and create a combination between the two, and maybe even add stone or metal to my designs. So like I said, I'm learning from this, and I'm getting more and more inspired with it. So keep up the good work, guys. You're contagious.
If you look up online, Ruud Zolnik, he's since passed away, but he was up in Kentucky, I think. But he used to turn a lot of plywood bowls and things, so you might enjoy seeing some of those.
What's his name again?
Zolnik. Look
Oh,
up
Rudy?
Rudy Zolnik.
Rudy Zolnik, Z-O-L-N-I-K?
No, it's an O-L. O-L.
O-S-O.
We'll have to get it in.
L. I-N.
What if I'll send it to you tomorrow, Ralph, and you can include it with the notes?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can remember that one.
Okay, but
Candlesticks are amazing.
yeah, but I've turned plywood. I've been doing bottle stops and stuff with plywood and stuff. The only downside to plywood is you have to sharpen your tool, like, because it's not the wood itself, it's the glue that's so abrasive, and it will dull your tools almost immediately.
Yes, because, and also plywood has grains in different directions and disintegrates, and then you get a lot of irregularities. So I use a lot of sanding.
Are you doing power sanding?
Yes, within the lathe, I've got a hand belt sander that I go over the profile, vibratory sanders,
Do you have
angle
anything
grinders, a whole
Do you have
angle
anything
grinders,
that's
yeah.
rotating?
Right. So therefore I keep a uniformity, and I just learned about the plastic cup over the surface. That's a good trick. I normally do is a paper template that I feel where I'm going to machine it. And that plastic cup is going to cut some corners. I think it's going to save me a lot of work there.
All right, anybody got anything else? Okay, well, guys, it's been great having you guys, your guests, and thank you, Brian, for coming over here to my shop and doing the demo. And I'm gonna go ahead and shut this thing down, and I'll get the recording out. I don't know, I doubt it tonight, maybe tomorrow, and send it to everybody. I've got your email, Sean, so I'll send you that and the other links that they send to everybody.
Thanks for doing this, Ralph. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. We'll see you guys at the next one.
Thanks, Ralph. Great, Brian.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.